an embarrassing performance, and by far the Kings' worst performance of this season. It's not even close. Losing to the Trailblazers in Portland 130 to 113, getting blown out by the Trailblazers, who are without their top two centers in Robert Williams, who's out for the season, and DeAndre Ayton, who is out for this game, without Shaedon Sharpe, without Jeremy Grant even having a good game, without Anthony Simons doing anything crazy, without Malcolm Brogdon doing anything crazy. Like, nobody on the Blazers who you would expect to actually cause the Kings problems did anything crazy, and somehow the Kings still got blown out. And it continues the trend of the Kings getting blown out. When they lose, they get blown out, and this one is by far the worst because it's actually to a bad team. The Kings before this game were undefeated against teams under 500, but this one, I mean, they just couldn't defend anybody. Sure, they couldn't hit a three, but this shouldn't have needed to be a game where they had to hit threes at a high rate. They could score on pretty much any possession they wanted to, especially when Sabonis was on the floor. I mean, Sabonis coming out aggressive again like he had been in the past games. He scored like 11 of the first 22 points for the Kings. He ended the game with 34 points, 14 for 19 from the field. And then you have De'Aaron Fox, who turned it on. He scored 43 points, was awesome from beyond the 3-point line, and only went 7 for 15 because he had to jack up a bunch of bad threes at the end of the game to try to claw the Kings back in. And still, the Kings got blown out. Our two stars were keeping us in it, and it just didn't matter. And you can look at everyone else offensively, like no one else scored above 10 points. But again, the offense didn't matter. Like, Fox and Sabonis should have been able to score every single point, and we still should have won this game. It shouldn't have mattered. The defense was that bad. It was open three after open three, open layup after open layup or dunk, just time after time against a horrible Blazers offense, by the way. And I don't want to hear about how the Kings need, different personnel. They need more defensive players. Like, yeah, obviously we know that. We knew that coming into the season. We've known that for over a year. We've known that. I don't care. This team with this personnel should not be having a Blazers team without Shaedon Sharpe and DeAndre Ayton score 130 points. That just shouldn't happen. The amount of times, the amount of opportunities the Kings had in this game where they were coming out of a timeout or coming out of, a quarter break or halftime where you're like, okay, we're only down this much, however much, within 10. If we just, start actually trying on defense now, we'll easily win this game. And just each time they continuously didn't do it. Fox and Sabonis just kept giving this team opportunity after opportunity to actually show up, and they continuously just chilled and didn't show up at all on the defensive end. Where did our defensive rebounding go? We were the best defensive rebounding team in the league, and then for the past 3 games, we've just been awful. I mean, what happened? There was just no effort on the glass. It was constantly Sabonis against 3 Blazers, time after time. Sabonis had 12 rebounds, and then you look, and it's like Keegan Murray had 4 rebounds, Herter with 2 rebounds, Barnes had 5 rebounds. Off the bench, nobody had more than 3 rebounds, and that was Chris Duarte with 3 rebounds in only 8 minutes. One of, the only bright spot in this game is Chris Duarte. When you are able to just pass the ball to your center in the post and get an easy layup on every single possession, it should be impossible to lose the game. And somehow the Kings found a way to get, not just lose it, but to get blown out. That should just be impossible. It really should. Somehow the Kings were only up 1 after the first quarter, when you had them scoring on every single possession when they wanted to. And then you had the second quarter where the Blazers bench just absolutely dominated. The Kings went away from the paint and just started chucking threes. And even if they weren't chucking threes for a long time, any portion of let up offensively, and the Blazers just skyrocketed. Their lead just skyrocketed because the Kings had to be scoring on every single possession to keep pace with the Blazers. Because guess what? The Blazers were scoring on every single possession. The energy was just so low, allowing just horrible offensive rebound after horrible offensive rebound. You know, there are the ones you can forgive, like when Monk got the block and the ball went right to Jabari Walker under the rim and he lays it up. Like, you can live with that, obviously. Some offensive rebounds are just going to happen because of the way the ball bounces, but some of these were just embarrassing effort. Keegan Murray was absolutely horrible rebounding the basketball. Keegan had an awful game. He couldn't get it going offensively, only 5 points, and he just was not good defensively like he normally is. Kevin Huerter was absolutely awful. He just cannot get anything going offensively for most of this season, and again was absolutely awful defensively. And the Blazers got up to a 19-point lead in the second quarter, and they went on like a massive run where the Kings just completely fell apart. The Blazers were getting to the rim every time, and the Kings kind of panicked. Fox, it didn't feel like, was locked in, and then he went out during the run, and Sabonis started turning the ball over, and the Blazers were getting out and running. The Kings could not stop them at all, and it took way too long to call a timeout. Like, Mike Brown, he wanted them to figure it out, and they absolutely did not figure it out. He called a timeout there, and they were down, whatever it was, 19, I think. And the Kings immediately come out and start dominating offensively again because, we can do that if we just stay calm offensively and don't rush things. We were just rushing things way too much against a Blazers team that just could not defend the paint at all. And so then Fox scored 10 straight, and we get it within 7 at halftime. And we're thinking, okay, like, we're fine. Just come out with just a tiny bit of defensive intensity to start the third quarter. And what do? We come out dominating the paint. Like, it's the same thing. We can score whenever we want to. Just go into Sabonis or Fox getting inside. Fox was hot from beyond the arc. We could score whenever we wanted. And it was just allowing offensive rebounds, or when we turn it over, just horrible transition defense, letting them get right to the rim every time. Just horrible energy was the thing that stopped us from getting back into this game. It's just watching a game where your team can score every single time down the court, and somehow the other team's lead just keeps increasing. Like, it doesn't make sense when you're watching it. How are we falling further behind when we have Sabonis and Fox who can just get whatever they want? It's just an embarrassing performance from everyone else. We cut it to 3 in that third quarter, and then Fox went to the bench, and, the offense doesn't score for like 3 straight possessions, and immediately the lead's right back up to around double digits. It's just that quickly things happen, because if you're not scoring every single possession, like, I wish I was exaggerating when I was talking about the Blazers scoring on every single possession, but for stretches they did, and a lot of different stretches in this game. It wasn't just one stretch. And then Fox came back in at the end of the third and, cut it to 9. Another time where you're like, okay, that third quarter went horribly and we're still within 9. Just come out in the fourth quarter with a little defensive intensity. And then what do they do in the fourth quarter? They come out and give up 4 straight open threes. One was to Anthony Simons. 2 were to Duop Reith, if I'm saying that name right. I'm not going to lie, I'd never heard of that guy before. He had 32 minutes and scored 25 points and had 5 offensive rebounds. We kept leaving him open from 3. He knocked down one of his 2 open looks at the start of the fourth. And then I can't remember who the other open 3 was given to, but whoever it was, they knocked it down. And then I think there were 2 plays where, just the entire fourth quarter, it was like, somehow we are still kind of within striking distance, but it doesn't feel like we even have a little bit of a shot. But if the Kings just locked in defensively, just at the end of the fourth. I mean, they could have gone 42 minutes without playing any defense. If they just locked in for the last 6 minutes, we still could have won this game. But it just never happened. And Malcolm Brogdon was just on the perimeter, just dribbling in one spot. He was just sitting there, dribbling, and got wide open by just dribbling in one spot. And that's like that play, along with another play where the Kings finally had a good defensive possession, and there's no one around to get the offensive rebound, and two Kings just bobbled the ball right to a Trailblazer and give it right back. And those two possessions, it was like, yeah, there's zero shot of us winning this game. Over an 82-game season, sometimes these games happen. You're not going to beat every team that's, a bad team, because at the end of the day, they still have good NBA players on their team. But what makes this one especially bad is that we've seen the Kings continuously get blown out time after time and just not be able to get back into the game. And again, that's what happened. And so when you can't do it against the Boston Celtics or the Minnesota Timberwolves, okay, that's one thing. But if you can't do it against the Portland Trailblazers, I mean, that's just embarrassing. And that marks a real problem. Like, is this team just that mentally weak that they cannot come from behind at all? Just the amount of defensive mental lapses it's just hard to watch a game like this when you have Toumani Camara just run in the exact same way at the exact same speed, and somehow Herter still manages to get crossed up and go the wrong way. Like, Toumani Camara was running the same way the entire time, and somehow Herter is going the other way. How? And then Camara just gets right to the rim for an easy layup. How? It's just like, what was I watching there? And everyone knows plus minus. It's a horrible stat. And Kevin Herter was a +5 in this game. And that tells you all you need to know about how horrible a stat the plus, minus is, because Kevin Herter was just awful, and he has been awful for a lot of this season. He came out, immediately hit a 3 in this game, and then completely disappeared on both ends of the floor. He got one block. That was the only other notable play he had. He couldn't rebound the ball, was constantly getting blown by at the point of attack, and just couldn't hit anything offensively. When Keegan Murray has a game like this, obviously he gets a bit of a pass, more than Kevin Herter, because Keegan Murray still provides outside of his scoring. And although this was not a good defensive game from him, he's been great defensively all season. So, I'm not going to let one game make me think differently. But that's the difference. Keegan Murray can add a lot more to a team, and Kevin Herter just hasn't shown that he can add more to a team other than shooting and scoring. And he has been horrible on the offensive end for a lot of this season. I thought Harrison Barnes was on track to have another good game, and then he just couldn't really score at all in the second half. He ended with 9 points. He wasn't horrible, but it's one of those moments where I was hoping he would step up a little more when other guys were struggling. But I think it's very easy to tell by how many minutes guys play who Mike Brown is liking what he's seeing from them. Mike Brown, he liked what he saw from Harrison Barnes more than anyone else. So Harrison Barnes was still out there playing 36 minutes. But I would have liked to see someone else. It was 48 minutes of just horrible defense the entire time. They didn't have one good defensive quarter or even stretch in this game, I thought. Not even a 4-minute stretch of good defense. And so I would have liked to seen a Juan Toscano-Anderson thrown out there, a Kessler Edwards, just somebody else. Alex Len, for the first time, was available since he got injured, but we did see JaVale McGee instead of him early in this game, and then we went small in the second half. JaVale caught 2 lobs, from Monk. That was a good start, but he still was not great in other aspects of the game. And so I guess Mike Brown just wasn't ready to throw Len back out there yet. But I want to see Juan Toscano Anderson in actual minutes because we just haven't seen that yet. And I would like to see that. And I just would have liked to see any other defensive presence, just anybody. And we did see Chris Duarte. We saw him for 8 minutes, and he was really good in his 8 minutes and was making all the correct decisions offensively. He came in immediately, hit a nice turnaround baseline midi in transition. He made some really nice passes and just really good decision making. And so he was about the only bright spot off the bench. And I do still have a little bit of hope that Chris Duarte can be the guy that I wanted him to be at the start of the season, or that I thought he could be, where he can come in and just play his role offensively and then be a pest defensively. But obviously 8 minutes of good basketball, it's a start, but we definitely need to see more from him because he just hasn't been consistent at all. But we do have to remember that although he is a little bit older, this is still only his third season, and his second season had a lot of injuries. So he's still newer to the NBA. And so I still have hope. I thought Keon Ellis made some nice plays offensively, but then he was just getting beat defensively by just a stronger Scoot Henderson. And nobody on the Kings could stop Scoot from going to the rim. That's definitely a problem. Like, you had Monk out there trying to stop him. That was never happening. Just no one was strong enough to stop him. I thought Monk had a pretty poor game. Like, he had some nice plays early on, but then he has lost his 3-point shot, which had been super consistent all season long. And it just feels like, almost like when he loses his 3-point shot, he just takes more of them. It's just like, you gotta get inside. He went 3 for 11, 1 for 7 from 3 with 7 points. And when the Trailblazers are without their, centers, and we were absolutely dominating in the paint, I would just like to see him get inside way more than he did. Sasha had a horrible game. Defensively, he was not good, and then just didn't hit shots offensively. Trey Lyles, in 14 minutes, didn't have a shot attempt, which is wild for him because we know he likes to get them up. But, we can talk about guys not hitting shots or certain guys just not being able to get it done offensively all we want. But at the end of the day, if we just get any stops in this game, Fox and Sabonis were going to take us to the win. They just needed somebody to come in and play some defense. You could tell, I thought Fox was kind of a bit lazy at the start of the game. And then when we got down, he locked in defensively. And then, he was going at Anthony Simons and making life difficult for him. And so he was locked in defensively. Sabonis was just getting hung out to dry by just constant, drive after drive right to the rim. And the Trailblazers very much worked inside out. In the first half and the third quarter, the start of the third quarter, they were destroying the Kings inside, just like the Kings were destroying them inside. Neither team could protect the paint. And then the Trailblazers were able to convert that inside pressure into open shots on the perimeter as the game went on. And then they were converting those wide open shots. This was just such a frustrating game to watch because we're coming off a solid homestand, but one where we lost 2 out of the last 3 games. And, they were against really good teams, but this is where we need to bounce back from that and start the road trip strong, a stretch of our schedule that we need to take advantage of. Or we're playing, we had a really tough schedule to start the season, and we went 17-11, and I just don't want that to go to waste because we can't beat the teams that we should be able to beat. And again, this is our first loss to a team under 500. It's like, yeah, sometimes we're going to lose to teams under 500. But again, it's just the fashion that we're getting beat, where we can't get a single stop and we just can't make it a game, even at the end. We have the reigning clutch player of the year on our team, and we can't get into a game where we get into clutch time all season long. We don't play close games. And that's a stark contrast from last season, where it felt like we only played close games. I mean, when you're getting killed by Duop Reith and Jabari Walker, that is just sad. But I said coming into this little 3-game road trip, 2-1 is a good road trip, 1-2 is a bad road trip. And so 2-1 is still on the table. So we just got to bounce back. And we now move on to Atlanta and then Memphis. Memphis 4-0 now since Ja has returned. 2 of those being in New Orleans. Tough wins in New Orleans. So they've looked really good. Atlanta has not looked very good this season. But they've not been good, but they got a better roster than the Portland Trail Blazers. So you got to take everyone seriously, and it just felt like the Kings did not take that game very seriously. Coming into a matchup with a team with Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's been amazing, especially from 3-point range. I believe they have Jalen Johnson back in the mix now, who was great early in the season and then picked up an injury. He, I believe, is back, and we just got to see more defensive intensity. Obviously, hopefully, guys can actually hit open shots. And I didn't mention it, but Malik Monk has been dealing with right foot irritation, I think is what it is. That could be a reason that he wasn't getting inside like we've seen him do in the past. But, hopefully somebody outside of Fox and Sabonis can get it going. But it's the defensive end where we just have to be so much better. And I don't want to hear about how the Kings need to upgrade their roster. Like, yes, obviously we do if we want to become, title contenders. But look at the roster that we have right now. The one that was the 3rd seed last year and the one that pushed the Warriors to 7 games. Like, this roster is good enough to not allow the Trailblazers to score 130 points. We don't have reinforcements coming. We're fully healthy now. There's no excuses. And I'm just sick of looking on Kings Twitter every time we have a bad defensive performance and just seeing a list of trade targets. It's like, yeah, I get it. The trade deadline is far away, though. We can't be thinking of that right now. At least I don't want to. I want to think about the guys that we do have right now. I've already, thought about our trade targets before. I'm not going to sit here after every loss and be like, yeah, but if we had Dorian Finney-Smith, how would it be different? Like, yes, that would make us better. But we are a good team without that, and we should be better than what we showed tonight. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Real Report. I will be back on Friday after the Kings game against the Atlanta Hawks. Peace.